My name is Clara Winslow. I'm 33 years old, and tonight I learned that an apology can be weaponized against the person giving it. Let me set the scene for you. Picture Scarlett Reeves's living room, and when I say picture it, I mean really see it. White leather sectionals that probably cost more than my car. A glass coffee table so flawlessly clear it looked like frozen air. Track lighting positioned at calculated angles, creating shadows and highlights that made everyone look like they were being interrogated. Which, in hindsight, maybe we were. Scarlett had prepared what she probably thought was a casual evening spread, a cheese board that belonged in a magazine, aged Gruyere, truffle-infused brie, imported manchego arranged in a perfect spiral with dried apricots, candied pecans, and honeycomb. A bottle of Sancerre sat in an ice bucket, sweating condensation that rolled down the glass like tears someone forgot to cry. My husband Mason sat across from me, 35 years old, product manager at Easton Gear, a company that manufactures outdoor equipment for people who want to look adventurous without actual discomfort. Mason has that catalog model attractiveness, sharp jawline, carefully groomed stubble, eyes that seem warm until you realize they're just mirrors reflecting whatever you want to see. Next to him sat Scarlett, 33 like me, but where I show my age in the fine lines around my eyes from too many nights squinting at computer screens. Scarlett looks airbrushed in real life. Perfect auburn hair that moves like it's always in slow motion. Skin so flawless I sometimes wonder if she's actually human or just an algorithm someone programmed to make other women feel inadequate. She owns Silvergate Events, planning elaborate parties for people who have so much money they need professionals to help them spend it. Her husband Elijah sat at the far end, 36, accountant at Oak and Bell CPAs, the kind of man who counts everything. Numbers, words, silences. He was already on his second glass of wine, and it was only 7 p.m. Mason raised his glass, and in that gesture I saw my entire future crystallize into two possible paths. "Tomorrow night," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone of manufactured patience that made my skin crawl. "You're going to apologize to Scarlett." I felt my fingers tighten around my own wine glass, the cold bit into my palm, anchoring me to reality. "Mason, let me finish." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're going to apologize for how you've been acting these past months, for the accusations you've been making, for making our friends uncomfortable with your jealousy and paranoia, for questioning Scarlett's generosity when she's done nothing but help us." Scarlett touched his arm, just briefly, fingers on wrist. "If you weren't looking for it, you might miss it. But I was looking for it now. I'd been looking for months." "Mason, she doesn't have to," Scarlett started, her voice honey-sweet with false concern. "Yes, she does." Mason's eyes locked on mine. "If you don't apologize tomorrow night, here, in front of Scarlett and Elijah, with witnesses to your words, then we're done. I'll file for divorce Monday morning." The room filled with silence so thick it felt solid. The only sound was the soft hum of Scarlett's wine refrigerator and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Here's what you need to understand about the 3 months leading up to this moment. Scarlett had introduced Mason to a contact at Redwood Suppliers. One introduction, one lunch meeting, and suddenly Mason was closing a contract worth $500,000. His boss praised him, his colleagues envied him, and Mason started looking at Scarlett like she'd handed him the keys to a kingdom he'd always deserved, but never been able to access. That's when everything shifted. Scarlett wasn't just at our dinners anymore, she was hosting them. She wasn't just a friend, she was essential, necessary, irreplaceable. Mason started disappearing Tuesday afternoons. "Lunch meeting," he'd say. "Tea, networking." But when I checked his work calendar, there was nothing. When I looked at his company credit card statements, there were no charges. I started noticing things that made my stomach twist. The way Scarlett's hand would rest on Mason's shoulder just a fraction too long. How they'd exchange glances that contained entire conversations I wasn't part of. The inside jokes that left me standing outside their private world. And then, there was the key. Mason had given Scarlett a spare key to our house. For emergencies, he'd explained when I'd asked, in case we get locked out. But I'd seen it in her kitchen, hanging on a hook next to her own keys, casual as breathing, as if our home had become an extension of hers, as if boundaries were suggestions rather than requirements. "We're family," Scarlett had said when she caught me staring at it one night. "That's what family does." But we weren't family. We were two couples sitting in a room built on lies so polite no one wanted to name them. Mason's ultimatum hung in the air like smoke after a fire. "Tomorrow night, you apologize or I file Monday. Your choice." I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I'd married 5 years ago. The man who'd promised partnership, equality, honesty. The man who now sat in another woman's living room, using my love as leverage to force my silence. Something inside me went very quiet. Not calm, quiet. The difference matters. Calm suggests peace. Quiet suggests the moment before an explosion. "I'll apologize," I heard myself say. Mason's shoulders dropped with relief. Scarlett smiled, warmth flooding back into her features. Elijah finally looked up from his wine, something that might have been pity crossing his face. "But I have conditions," I continued. Mason's relief evaporated. "Conditions? Clara, you agreed—" "I agreed to apologize with witnesses. I'm choosing my witnesses. I want Elijah there." "Why does Elijah need to—" "Because I want someone present who isn't emotionally invested in proving me crazy. Because I want a witness who has nothing to gain from my humiliation. Because those are my terms." I kept my voice steady. "Take them or leave them." Mason looked at Scarlett. Some silent conversation passed between them. Negotiation, calculation, assessment of risks and benefits. The kind of wordless communication that only comes from extended intimacy. "Fine," Mason said finally. "Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., all 4 of us." "Good." I stood, set down my untouched wine, and headed toward the door. "Clara?" Scarlett called after me, her voice touched with what was probably supposed to sound like concern. "Are you all right?" I turned back to look at them. Mason and Scarlett sitting too close on that white leather sectional. Elijah isolated at the end with his wine. All of us playing our parts in a performance we'd somehow agreed to without discussing the script. "I'm perfect," I said. "I'll see you tomorrow." I drove home alone. Mason stayed. Just for one more drink. Through my rearview mirror, I watched them standing in the doorway, her hand on his arm again. Elijah had already disappeared back into the house. When I got home to our empty house, the house that suddenly felt like a stage set rather than a home, I did something I'd never done in 5 years of marriage. I took off my wedding ring. Not dramatically. I didn't throw it or cry or make a grand gesture. I just slid it off my finger and held it in my palm, feeling its weight. 5 years of promises compressed into a circle of white gold. I filled a glass with water and dropped the ring in. It sank to the bottom, distorted through the liquid. I didn't throw it away. I just needed to see it separate from me. Needed to know I could remove it. That it wasn't permanent. That nothing was permanent. My mother's necklace rested against my chest. A simple silver chain with a small pendant she'd worn every day of her 30-year marriage. She'd given it to me in the hospital, her voice already thin with dying. "Don't be silent like I was," she'd whispered. "Don't let anyone make you small. Don't spend your life pretending things are fine when they're breaking you from the inside." I'd promised. And I'd thought I was keeping that promise by speaking up when something felt wrong, by asking questions, by refusing to be gaslit. But tomorrow, I'd really keep it. I touched the pendant, feeling its weight. Then I went to my office and opened my laptop. Here's something most people don't know about me. I'm a data security engineer at Redwood Analytics. My entire job is recovering deleted information, authenticating data integrity, verifying chains of custody for digital evidence. I'm good at finding things people think they've erased. Excellent at it, actually. For months, I'd been ignoring the signs, telling myself I was paranoid, oversensitive, exactly what Mason sometimes suggested. But tonight, after that ultimatum, after being told to apologize for noticing reality, I was done ignoring. Mason's laptop sat on his desk, closed and powered off. He always left it at home when he went out, too worried about theft to carry it everywhere. I knew his password. He'd given it to me years ago, back when we still trusted each other with everything. I texted him first. "I'll apologize tomorrow when Elijah's there. 7 works?" 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Perfect. Thank you for being reasonable. Reasonable. As if compliance and reasonableness were the same thing. As if not fighting your own erasure made you mature. I set my phone down and looked at his laptop. Tomorrow I'd apologize. But not for what Mason expected. I'd apologize for staying quiet this long, for letting fear of conflict override my instincts, for making myself small enough to fit into someone else's comfort zone. The house settled around me with familiar sounds, creaks and sighs, the refrigerator's hum, the distant traffic. The clock on the wall ticked forward, second by second, toward tomorrow, toward truth. I opened Mason's laptop and went to work. People don't understand how deletion actually works. When you delete a file from a computer, you're not erasing it. You're just telling the operating system, "This space is available now. Feel free to write over it when you need room." But until something new claims that space, the old data sits there, invisible to casual users, perfectly recoverable to someone who knows the architecture. And I know the architecture intimately. It was 1:15 a.m. Mason wouldn't be home for hours. I'd learned that pattern over the past months. One more drink meant at least 3 hours. Probably 4. Enough time for me to do what needed to be done. I connected my forensics USB drive to his laptop. This isn't some black market hacking tool. It's professional software I use for work. A portable operating system loaded with recovery programs that can read data without altering the source. No footprints, no traces, just clean read-only analysis that would hold up in any court. The USB glowed blue in the darkness of my office. First step, create a complete image of his hard drive. This produces an exact binary copy of everything, every file, every fragment of deleted data, every scrap of information. The original stays pristine and untouched. Any analysis happens on the copy. In digital forensics, this is called preservation. In marriage, it's called finding out your husband has been lying for almost a year. The imaging process took 43 minutes. I watched the progress bar crawl across my screen, percentage by painful percentage. My coffee went from hot to warm to cold. The house made its nighttime sounds around me, the furnace cycling, wood expanding and contracting, the distant sound of someone's dog barking 3 houses down. When the image completed, I loaded it into my recovery software and started the scan. The software works like an archaeologist excavating a dig site, brushing away layers to expose what's been buried. It catalogs everything: file signatures, data fragments, metadata timestamps. It reconstructs what's been deliberately destroyed. What it found made my hands start shaking. Deleted browser history from the past 8 months. Deleted text messages synchronized from his phone before being erased. Deleted photos from his phone's automatic backup folder. A deleted folder labeled Personal Private. That folder name made something cold settle in my chest. Everyone has private files, medical records, old photos, tax documents. But the fact that he'd deleted it entirely meant he didn't want it found even accidentally. I opened it. Inside, bank statements I'd never seen, receipts for purchases I didn't know about, photos that had never appeared in our shared albums, and text messages, dozens of conversations between Mason and Scarlett, all deleted from his phone, all time-stamped and preserved in this secret digital grave. I started reading. June 3rd, 10:47 p.m. Mason. Tonight was perfect. Finally someone who understands what I need. Scarlett. Always. You know I get you in ways others don't. June 10th, 11:23 p.m. Scarlett. Still thinking about our conversation, about wanting something more exciting than safe. Mason. Clara's great, but she's so cautious. Everything's a risk assessment with her. She makes me feel suffocated. Scarlett. I like risks. I like people who aren't afraid to want more. June 24th, 1:15 a.m. Mason. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about how different things could have been. Scarlett. Different how? Mason. If I'd met you first. Before I settled. The word settled hit me like a physical blow. I had to set down my coffee cup before my shaking hands dropped it. July 8th, 2:45 p.m. Mason. Tuesday lunch, usual spot? Scarlett. Riverbend Cafe. I'll reserve our table in the back. Riverbend Cafe. Tuesday lunch. I pulled up his work calendar for that date. Completely blank. He'd told me he had client meetings. He'd lied with such casual ease it made me wonder what else he'd lied about. I kept reading, documenting everything. July 15th, 11:38 p.m. Scarlett. Elijah's working late again. Sometimes I think he loves numbers more than me. Mason. I know exactly how that feels. Being seen as stable instead of exciting. July 29th, 3:52 a.m. Mason. You awake? Scarlett. Now I am. What's wrong? Mason. Nothing. Everything. I needed to hear your voice. Scarlett. Come over. Back door's unlocked. Elijah took his sleep aid. He won't wake up. 3:52 in the morning. I checked my own calendar. I'd been home that night. Mason had told me he couldn't sleep and was going for a drive. I'd woken around 4:30 to find him gone. Assumed he was walking off insomnia. He'd gone to Scarlett's house. While her husband slept upstairs. While I slept in our bed. Trusting him. August 12th, 2:17 a.m. Mason. If we'd been together from the start, tonight would be easier. All of this would be easier. Scarlett. We already are together, Mason. Just not on paper. Not yet. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. We already are together. Just not on paper. Not yet. The timestamp glowed. 2:17 a.m. I took screenshots, calculated cryptographic hashes for each file to prove they hadn't been altered. Started building a spreadsheet. Dates, times, message content, patterns. Every Tuesday lunch, every late-night text, every deleted conversation that painted a detailed portrait of two people conducting an affair they thought no one would ever discover. But I needed more than messages. Messages could be explained away as friendship, as emotional support, as innocent misunderstanding. I needed financial evidence. I opened the bank statements. Our joint account, the one Mason and I used for household expenses, for savings, for building our future together, showed withdrawals I'd never authorized and didn't recognize. $380 on June 4th, $450 on June 18th, $420 on July 2nd, $385 on July 16th, every 2 weeks like clockwork, 11 months of withdrawals totaling $4,860, the memo line on each one, cash. I cross-referenced the dates with his deleted messages. Every withdrawal happened the day before a Tuesday lunch with Scarlett. He was taking cash from our shared account to pay for their dates. Dates he was having while telling me we needed to save money, while telling me we couldn't afford the vacation I wanted, while making me feel guilty for buying myself anything beyond basics. But that wasn't even the worst part. I found 3 larger transfers I'd never seen before: $6,000 in March, $7,000 in May, $5,000 in August. Total, $18,000 moved from our joint account to something called Parker Properties LLC. I'd never heard of Parker Properties. 15 minutes of searching business registries gave me the answer. Parker Properties was a shell company registered in Delaware. Listed owner, Scarlett Reeves. My cold coffee suddenly tasted like bile. I followed the money trail. Parker Properties had issued invoices to Silvergate Events, Scarlett's company, for consulting services. But the money had originated from my joint account with Mason. Our money funneled through Scarlett's shell company back to her business. A financial loop that benefited both of them while draining our savings. I checked our current balance, $3,200. When we'd opened this account 3 years ago, we'd had $45,000 saved for a house down payment. Where had $42,000 gone? Some of it to normal expenses, sure, but $4,160 in cash withdrawals, $18,000 to Scarlett's shell company, that was nearly $23,000 Mason had taken from our future to fund his affair. I kept digging through the deleted files. Photos appeared, not explicit, nothing I couldn't show in court, but somehow worse than explicit would have been. Photos of intimacy without physicality. Mason and Scarlett at Riverbend Cafe, sitting at their private corner table. His hand close to hers on the table surface, not quite touching but close enough to show intention. Her laughing at something he'd said, her whole face lit up with joy. Him looking at her with an expression I recognized, the way he used to look at me in our first year together. More photos. At a wine tasting event, at a farmer's market, in her kitchen with him cooking while she watched from the counter. All deleted from his phone within days of being taken, covering tracks, hiding evidence, creating a secret world that existed parallel to our marriage. I sat back, my body finally registering the tension I'd been holding. My shoulders ached, my jaw hurt from clenching. The clock read 2:43 a.m. Mason still wasn't home. Here's what I had: systematic evidence of emotional infidelity, significant financial misconduct, ongoing deception, and deliberate destruction of evidence. In cybersecurity terms, this was a comprehensive breach. Every system compromised, every defense bypassed, every protection violated. But evidence only matters if you can protect it. In my work, we follow something called chain of custody, the documentation proving evidence hasn't been tampered with from collection to presentation. Every person who handles it, every transfer point, every storage location must be logged, time-stamped, and verified. Break the chain, and lawyers tear your evidence apart. How do we know you didn't fabricate this? How do we know it's authentic? How do we know you didn't alter it to support your narrative? I couldn't let that happen. I connected a brand new USB drive, still sealed in its factory packaging, formatted it completely to remove any manufacturer data, then copied the recovered files, calculating SHA-256 cryptographic hashes for each one. These hashes are like digital fingerprints, absolutely unique to each file's exact content. Change even one bit of data and the hash changes completely. It's mathematical proof of authenticity. I documented everything in a master log. Initial access time, 1:03 a.m. imaging completion, 1:43 a.m. recovery process started, 1:47 a.m. file extraction completed, 2:34 a.m. hash calculations finished, 2:51 a.m. Final verification. 3:07 am I created a comprehensive evidence package with the log, signed it with my professional digital signature, and burned it onto a CD-ROM. CDs can't be rewritten once burned. The data becomes permanent. Perfect for evidence preservation. I made 2 identical copies. One would stay with me for tonight's confrontation. One would go to a lawyer tomorrow. At 3:15 a.m., headlights swept across our front window. Mason's car in the driveway. I'd already shut down his laptop, returned it to its exact original position, and hidden my evidence. The USB with the master copy went into a fireproof lockbox in my office safe. The duplicate stayed in my purse. I sat in the darkened living room and waited. Mason came in quietly, clearly trying not to wake me. He smelled like wine, expensive Pinot Noir, Scarlett's favorite, the kind that costs $60 a bottle. When he saw me sitting there in the darkness, he actually flinched. "Jesus, Clara, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark? Why are you even awake?" "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about tomorrow." "You should try melatonin or something. Helps me when I'm stressed." He leaned down to kiss the top of my head. Automatic gesture, zero affection. His lips barely touched my hair. "I'm exhausted. Let's go to bed." "How was your drink with Scarlett and Elijah?" "Good. Fine. We talked about some business stuff, the Redwood contract, boring details." He yawned, overperforming exhaustion. "Scarlett's helping me prep for the quarterly review." Every word a lie. I'd read their messages. They'd talked about us. About me specifically. About how I was the obstacle between Mason and his happiness. About their plans for after our divorce. "That's nice of her," I said. "It's good you have someone so invested in your success." "She's a good friend." Friend. The word echoed in the darkness, hollow as a drum with nothing inside. "Mason?" "Yeah?" Impatient now, wanting this conversation over so he could sleep off his wine and lies. "Tomorrow night. The apology. I meant what I said about Elijah being there." He sighed deeply, and I heard every ounce of his frustration in that breath. Frustration that I wasn't making this easy, that I wasn't disappearing quietly, that I was insisting on conditions instead of just complying. "Why does that matter so much to you?" "Because I want a witness who isn't emotionally invested in proving I'm unstable. Someone who'll remember what actually gets said versus what people later claim was said." "No one thinks you're unstable, Clara." But his tone said, "Everyone thinks you're unstable, and tomorrow will prove it." I stood, facing him in the thin light from the street lamp outside. "Then you won't mind Elijah being there to witness my apology?" Something flickered across his face. Calculation, concern, the first tremor of worry that this might not go according to his plan. But he nodded. "Fine. Both of them. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Can we please go to bed now? I have to work in the morning." "Of course." I started toward the bedroom, then stopped in the hallway entrance. "Mason, that spare key you gave Scarlett, the one to our house." "What about it?" Defensive, immediately. "Interesting." "I want it back before tomorrow night." "Why?" "It's just for emergencies, in case we get locked out or something." "Our house shouldn't have keys hanging in other people's kitchens. That's not normal. That's not what friends do. I want it back." He studied me in the darkness, trying to decode what this request meant. Was I testing him? Setting a trap? Or finally noticing what had been obvious for months? "Okay, I'll get it tomorrow before dinner." "Before tomorrow night," I corrected. "Yes, before tomorrow night." Exasperation dripping from his voice now. "Anything else you want to control?" Control. He'd given another woman access to our home, and I was the controlling one for wanting that to stop. "No, that's everything." I went to the bedroom but didn't change into pajamas. I sat on the edge of our bed, still fully dressed, and waited until his breathing evened into sleep. It took 19 minutes, I counted. He was exhausted from wine and deception. Then I returned to my office. At 5 a.m. I made coffee. Strong enough to strip paint, black as truth, bitter as betrayal. At 5:30 a.m. I watched the sun rise through my office window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that promised nothing but illuminated everything. At 6 a.m. I texted my coworker Paige. "Coffee this morning? Need to talk. It's urgent." She responded within minutes. 8 a.m. Corner cafe. "What's wrong?" "Everything. Or maybe nothing's wrong anymore, and that's the problem." I spent the next hour organizing my evidence into folders, creating backup copies of backup copies, building a fortress of truth that would be impossible to tear down. At Corner Cafe, Paige took one look at me. No makeup, yesterday's clothes, hair pulled back in a messy knot, eyes that probably showed every sleepless hour, and ordered 2 double espressos without asking what I wanted. "Talk," she said, pushing my coffee across the scarred wooden table. I told her everything except the forensics. That felt too big, too potentially legally complicated to explain in a coffee shop. But I told her about the Tuesday disappearances, about Mason's empty calendar and missing credit card charges, about the pattern I'd noticed and ignored and noticed again until I couldn't not see it anymore. "He's been vanishing every Tuesday afternoon for at least 6 months," I said, both hands wrapped around my cup like it could transfer heat into my cold certainty. "Says he's in meetings, but there's nothing on his calendar. No expense reports. No paper trail. Just gone. 3 hours every week. Like clockwork." Paige's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something that looked like guilty knowledge. "How long?" she asked quietly. 6 months that I tracked systematically, maybe longer before I started documenting. "Clara." She reached across the table and gripped my hand. "I've seen him. On Tuesdays." My heart stopped. Actually stopped beating for a moment before slamming back into rhythm. "What?" "At Riverbend Cafe. I go there for lunch sometimes. They have good sandwiches and it's close to the gym. I've seen Mason there with a woman. Auburn hair, always dressed like she just stepped out of a fashion magazine. They sit at the corner table in the back. The first time I saw them, I figured she was a client. The second time, I thought maybe a colleague. But by the third and fourth time," she squeezed my hand. "They don't act like colleagues, Clara. They act like people who think they're invisible." "Describe how they act." "They lean in close when they talk, touch each other's arms, share bites of food, laugh like they're the only people in the room. Once I walked past their table on my way to the bathroom, they were so absorbed in conversation they didn't even notice me. She was saying something about Portland, and Mason looked excited in a way I've never seen him look at work." Portland. Mason had mentioned Portland recently, said his company might open an office there. Had that been real or part of their exit strategy? "How many times have you seen them?" 4 that I remember clearly, maybe 5. I didn't say anything because she looked genuinely distressed. Because what if I was wrong? What if I read too much into innocent interaction and destroyed your marriage with my suspicions? "You wouldn't have destroyed anything. You'd have just shown me it was already destroyed." We talked for another hour. Paige described everything she'd seen in forensic detail. The wine they ordered at lunch, how they'd sit on the same side of the table instead of across from each other, the way Mason would look at Scarlett when she wasn't looking at him. The kind of observation that comes from seeing something repeatedly and knowing something's wrong but not being sure enough to speak up. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "Tonight, I'm going to apologize." "For what?" "You didn't do anything wrong." "No. But Mason thinks I'm going to apologize for being suspicious, for questioning his relationship with Scarlett, for making everyone uncomfortable with my jealousy. I pulled the duplicate USB drive from my purse. Instead, I'm going to apologize for staying silent as long as I did. Paige looked at the small silver drive. What's on that? Everything. Messages they deleted. Financial records showing money moving from our joint account to her business. Photos they thought no one would ever see. A complete documentation of their affair. That's... Clara, that's serious evidence. I know. I pushed it across the table to her. I need you to keep this safe. If anything happens to me, if I suddenly drop this whole thing, if I disappear, if Mason convinces everyone I had a breakdown, I need you to take this to the police. Can you do that? She picked up the drive carefully. What exactly could happen? I don't know. Probably nothing. But people do dangerous things when they're cornered, when their perfect lives are about to implode. I met her eyes. Promise me. If I suddenly go silent, if I start acting like everything's fine, if I back down from this, don't believe it. Use that drive. I promise. The password is written on a piece of paper in your name in my desk at work. Top drawer, under the keyboard tray. You really thought this through? I'm a data security engineer. Thinking through disaster scenarios is literally my job. We finished our coffee. Paige promised to be available by phone all night, to come over if I needed backup, to document anything suspicious. Then I went to see a lawyer. Victoria Hale's office looked exactly like you'd expect a divorce attorney's office to look. No softening plants, no family photos, just wall-to-wall law books and a massive oak desk that had probably witnessed 1,000 broken marriages. The chairs facing her desk were deliberately uncomfortable. This wasn't a place for relaxation. Victoria herself was steel gray suit, hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, eyes that had seen every variety of human betrayal and remained unimpressed by all of it. Ma, I need legal advice, I said after explaining the basic situation. If I recovered deleted data from my husband's computer using professional forensic techniques, can he sue me? Can he claim I violated his privacy and turn this around on me? Victoria leaned back, fingers steepled, weighing her words. Complex question. In most jurisdictions, if it's a shared device in a marital home and you had legitimate access, you're probably protected. Courts generally recognize reduced privacy expectations in marriages, especially regarding shared property. But if he claims you hacked into accounts, bypassed security measures he'd put in place, or accessed data he'd clearly marked as private, you could face civil liability. He could sue for invasion of privacy, emotional distress, maybe even try to get criminal charges filed. My stomach dropped. So I might have just armed him against me. That depends entirely on your documentation. She pulled out a legal pad. Walk me through your process. Every single step. Don't minimize or skip anything. I described everything. The forensic USB that didn't modify source data, the complete drive imaging, the recovery software I use professionally, the hash calculations proving data integrity, the chain of custody documentation, the time-stamped logs. Victoria's expression shifted as I talked. You documented everything. I treat evidence like I treat work projects. Complete documentation, verification at every step, unbroken chain of custody. I can prove the recovered data is authentic and unaltered. She made rapid notes. Can you prove he deliberately deleted these files? I can show they were moved to secure deletion folders and overwritten using specialized software. That's not accidental deletion. That's evidence destruction. Perfect. She looked up with something approaching respect. Most people come in here with screenshots if they're lucky. You're coming with forensic-grade evidence that would stand up in criminal court. Will it protect me if he sues? Nothing guarantees outcomes. But you have legitimate access to a shared device, professional methodology, proper documentation, and justified purpose. You observed suspicious behavior and found evidence of financial misconduct with marital assets. That makes your access legitimate investigation, not invasion of privacy. Relief made my hands shake. So I didn't just destroy my case before starting. You built your case properly. Now we protect it. She pulled out paperwork. I'll take custody of your master evidence. We'll create a notarized affidavit documenting the transfer. That establishes official chain of custody that will hold up in any proceeding. What about the financial misconduct? The shell company and transfers? Victoria's smile went cold. That's actually your strongest evidence. Courts take financial misconduct seriously. We can argue that $18,000 should come entirely from his share of marital assets. He already took his portion plus some. And emotional affairs absolutely count in Washington, especially with financial component. We spent 2 hours documenting everything. She took custody of my sealed evidence, I received an official receipt, and we scheduled follow-up meetings. By the time I left, I had a lawyer, a strategy, and something I hadn't felt in months: power. At 5 p.m., I went home to prepare. I chose my outfit carefully. Not dress up fancy. I wasn't playing Scarlett's game of expensive clothes and performed femininity. Jeans that fit well and made me feel capable. Black sweater with 3/4 sleeves. Minimal jewelry, except my mother's necklace. Hair pulled back, functional, not decorative. This wasn't about looking good. This was about being ready. I packed my purse methodically. Duplicate USB drive in protective case. Printed evidence summary. Organized and indexed phone. Fully charged. Recording app tested digital voice recorder as backup. Victoria's emergency contact information protein bar. And water bottle. My mother's words, "Don't be silent." At 6:45 p.m., Mason came home with Scarlett's spare key. "Got it," he said, dropping it on the counter with a metallic clink. I picked it up. The metal was warm from being in his pocket all day. I looked at it for a long moment, this small piece of cut metal that represented so much. Crossed boundaries, violated privacy, access that should never have been granted. Then I dropped it in the kitchen trash. It landed among coffee grounds and vegetable peelings with a soft thud. "Happy?" Mason asked, sarcasm evident. "Very." We drove separately to Scarlett's house. Mason insisted on it, said it would be easier. What he meant, easier for him to stay after I left. Easier to avoid sitting in awkward silence with me. Easier to pretend we weren't even a couple anymore. I drove slowly, using the time to breathe, to center myself, to remember why I was doing this. At every stoplight, I touched my mother's necklace. Don't be silent. I wouldn't be. Not anymore. Scarlett's house sat in a perfect neighborhood. Trimmed lawns, flawless facades hiding ugly truths. Mason's car was already in the driveway when I arrived. I rang the doorbell. Different Clara now. Scarlett opened. Designer jeans, emerald blouse, diamond studs. "Clara, come in. We're glad you're here." We, her and Mason, not me. Inside, white leather, glass tables, and a camera half hidden by a plant. Recording? Good. More evidence. Mason and Scarlett sat close. Elijah on the opposite sofa, tired. Me alone. "Elijah," I said, "sit next to me." He obeyed. Mason's jaw clenched. "This isn't a deposition," he snapped. "Isn't it?" I placed my phone on the table. "I'm recording. One-party consent." Silence. Scarlett's smile flickered. "Why record an apology?" "For truth. Recordings don't lie." Mason stood. "You're turning this into an ambush." "No, into accountability." I set down my recorder. "For the record, Clara Winslow, 7:12 p.m., August 15th. Present: Mason Cole, Scarlett Reeves, Elijah Reeves. Everyone informed and free to leave. No one moved. I laid a cream envelope on the table. My apology. Mason frowned. What's that? My version, not yours. I unfolded the paper. I want to start by apologizing to myself for staying quiet, for letting oversensitive make me doubt reality, for making myself small. Clara, Mason began. I'm not finished. I also want to apologize to Elijah, I said, because we both deserve truth. I slid him the envelope. He frowned. What is this? Evidence. Mason exploded. You were supposed to apologize for paranoia. It's not paranoia when it's proven. Elijah opened the envelope. USB. Printed summary. June 3rd, 10:47 p.m. Tonight was perfect. June 4th, 380 withdrawal. June 10th, Clara's so cautious. June 24th, 1:15 a.m. How different if I'd met you first. July 29th, 3:52 a.m. Come over. Back door's unlocked. $18,000 transferred to Parker Properties LLC. Photos attached. Elijah looked up. Scarlett, is this true? She stammered. He was just a friend. At 4 a.m.? Elijah shouted. Mason barked. Clara's jealous. No, I'm threatened by missing money and lies, I said. The USB has everything. Deleted messages, records. A lawyer has the master copy. Elijah's face hardened. Tell me the truth. Scarlett whispered. We were going to wait. Until after the divorce. Whose divorce? Elijah asked. Mine, Mason said. Clara and I. We weren't having problems until you created them, I cut in. It wasn't physical, Mason insisted. Emotional betrayal still counts. Elijah shouted. You funneled $18,000 through her company. Scarlett cried. You don't understand? Oh, I understand, Elijah said. You planned everything except getting caught. Mason turned on me. You violated my privacy. I used shared access. No laws broken, just truth recovered. I faced Elijah. Use it as you wish. You deserve honesty. He nodded. Better to know than live blind. Scarlett reached for him. He pulled away. There's nothing left to say. Mason tried. Clara twisted everything. Stop rewriting reality, I said. I walked to the door. You wanted an apology. Here it is. I'm sorry I stayed silent. But I'm not sorry for exposing the truth. You've destroyed everything, Mason said. No. You did. I just documented it. There's a difference. He threatened. You'll regret this. Maybe, but I doubt it. I left. Behind me, voices rose, crying, anger, collapse. In my car, I watched the lights flicker inside that perfect house. Paige texted, You okay? Me. Getting there. Then I drove home, to the house that was finally just mine. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in watching perfect facades crumble in real time. Monday morning, Victoria called before I'd finished my first coffee. I saw your recordings. Excellent documentation. Is it admissible? In Washington? Absolutely. One-party consent. You were present. You announced it. Textbook legal evidence. Papers shuffled. How are you holding up? Ask me when the shock wears off. Fair. I'm drafting a demand letter to Mason. Full financial disclosure, return of misappropriated funds, formal asset separation. Also filing for protective order on your joint accounts. No more withdrawals without court approval. He'll fight. Let him. We have documentation. He has explanations. Documentation wins every time. More shuffling. I'm also creating a protected account in your name only. We'll transfer your rightful half of remaining joint funds. He can't access it, can't claim it, can't touch it. You're financially protected. What about the house? Both names on the deed? Yes. Then you're entitled to stay. If he wants you out, he'll have to buy your half or wait for settlement. Either way, you're protected. She paused. He's going to claim you destroyed the marriage. And I'll say he destroyed it by conducting an affair and stealing joint funds. Emotional affairs count in Washington, especially paired with financial misconduct. We'll be fine. Monday afternoon, Mason came home while I was working. I heard his key, the sound of his right to access being questioned with every turn of the lock. Clara? His voice echoed through the house. I saved my work and walked out. He looked diminished somehow. The confidence he'd worn like expensive cologne had evaporated. We need to talk. My lawyer will contact yours. Please, 5 minutes. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I saw the messages, the financial records, the pattern of deception. What could you possibly add? He collapsed into a kitchen chair. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy. Almost. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said quietly. Scarlett and I were just friends. Then she helped with the contract, and I felt, for the first time in years, someone saw me as capable, as powerful, as worth investing in. I've always seen you as capable. No, you've always seen me as safe. He looked up with red eyes. There's a difference. You wanted stability, security, someone who wouldn't take risks. And I tried to be that, but it felt like drowning. Like every day I was suffocating under the weight of being your safe choice. So you found someone who'd be your risky choice. Very enlightened. It's not. Then what is it, Mason? Explain how transferring $18,000 to your lover's shell company is about feeling capable. He flinched at lover. She's not. We didn't. Emotional affairs are still affairs. You don't get credit for not sleeping together while you destroyed everything else. I know. His voice cracked. I know I messed up. But going to Elijah, showing him everything, that was cruel. Cruel? I laughed, sharp and cold. You want to talk about cruel? You gave another woman a key to our house. You told her you wished you'd met her first. You made plans for a future with her while coming home to me every night and letting me believe we had something worth saving. I was going to tell you. When? After you'd emptied the account? After you'd filed and I had no idea why? Or were you just going to keep gaslighting me until I thought I was crazy for noticing reality? He stood. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Actively. Deliberately. For almost a year. And when I tried to talk about it, you called me jealous, paranoid, oversensitive. You made me apologize for noticing what you were doing. I crossed my arms. So no, I don't have 5 minutes for your explanations. I have a lawyer for that. Clara, please. Get out. This is my house too. Then get a lawyer and we'll argue about it in court. But right now, tonight, I want you gone. He stared, realizing I wasn't backing down. That the woman who'd always compromised, always smoothed things over, always chosen peace, that woman was finished. Fine, I'll stay at a hotel, but this isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't realize it yet. He grabbed his coat and left. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for 10 minutes before finally driving away. Then I called Victoria. He came by, tried to explain. I sent him away. Good. No engagement without witnesses. Everything goes through lawyers from now on. He's going to fight dirty. Probably, but we have clean evidence. That matters more. Tuesday, Paige appeared at my door with Thai food and wine. News travels, she said, unpacking containers. Kendra in accounting heard from someone who knows Scarlett's assistant. Elijah moved out Sunday night. He did? Into a furnished rental near his office. Filed for separation Monday morning. She poured wine. Scarlett's trying to contact him. He had security escort her from his workplace yesterday. I didn't mean to destroy their marriage. You didn't destroy anything. You revealed what was already destroyed. She handed me a glass. Elijah deserved to know. Would you want to stay with someone planning to leave you all along? No. Then you did right. Wednesday, Mason's lawyer sent the first response. Victoria called to read highlights. He claims you violated privacy, demands return of evidence, threatens to sue for emotional distress. She sounded amused. It's a very loud letter saying absolutely nothing. Can he sue? He can file anything. Whether it goes anywhere is different. Privacy claim is weak. Shared device, legitimate access, professional process. Emotional distress is laughable. You can't cause distress by exposing someone's affair. The demand for evidence return? Not happening. We have legal custody, properly documented. What do we do? I send back a calm letter explaining we'll see him in court with our documented evidence and look forward to a judge reviewing the financial misconduct. That usually quiets things. Friday afternoon, Elijah called. Clara, it's Elijah Reeves. Hi. I wanted to thank you. For the evidence. For telling me. His voice was steady but tired. I've been going through everything on that drive. The messages, the financials, all of it. I'm sorry you had to see it. Don't be. I needed to. He paused. I found things not in your summary. A joint credit card I didn't know about. Travel bookings for two. A lease agreement for an apartment in Portland they were planning to rent next year after we'd adjusted. My stomach dropped. Portland? They were going to move there together. Start fresh where neither of us would find them easily. His laugh was bitter. I'm an accountant. I'm supposed to notice money moving, but I trusted her so completely I never looked. That's not your fault. Isn't it? I saw signs, late nights, her smiling at her phone, how she'd zone out during conversations. I saw everything and told myself I was paranoid, that successful couples trust each other. Trust should be rewarded, not exploited. Nice thought. Doesn't make me feel less stupid. Papers rustled. My lawyer wants copies. For the divorce. Scarlett's claiming I'm overreacting, that nothing physical happened so it doesn't count. Emotional affairs count. That's what my lawyer said. Especially with financial misconduct attached. He sighed. I'm taking her to the cleanest divorce possible. No reconciliation, no counseling. Just done. She can have Mason. They deserve each other. Have you talked to him? Once. He tried explaining how it just happened, how they didn't mean for it to go this far. I told him people who don't mean for things to happen don't delete message threads and create shell companies. He paused. Clara, if you need a witness, for court, depositions, whatever, I'll testify. About what I found. What they did. Thank you. It's the least I can do. You gave me my truth. I can help protect yours. Saturday, Mason's sister Jennifer called. We'd always gotten along. She was practical. A nurse who didn't tolerate nonsense. Is it true? What Mason's saying about you manufacturing evidence? I didn't manufacture anything. I used professional forensics on a shared device. Everything's documented and verified. So he did have an affair? Emotional affair, yes. With significant financial misconduct. She exhaled. He's telling everyone you're unstable, that you've been jealous of Scarlett from the start, that you invented this because you couldn't handle him having a successful female friend. I have messages, bank records, time-stamped evidence with cryptographic verification. It's not invention. I believe you. Pause. He's my brother and I love him. But I've watched him become someone I don't recognize over the past year. More arrogant, more entitled. Like he'd figured out how life should work, and everyone else was just obstacles. Scarlett made him feel important. And you made him feel accountable. I know which matters more. She sighed. My parents are on his side, saying you should have tried counseling, that you gave up too quickly. I wanted you to know that's not everyone's opinion. Thank you. If you need anything, character witness, someone to confirm he's changed, let me know. Family loyalty has limits. Sunday evening, Mason returned to the house. I'd expected it. He needed clothes, documents, things he couldn't replace. Paige sat in the kitchen as my witness. Mason knocked instead of using his key. Progress. I opened the door. He looked terrible. Unshaven, exhausted, same clothes as Wednesday. I need to get some things. Fine, I'll wait here while you pack. Clara. Pack, Mason. That's all we're doing. He went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding. Paige gave me a thumbs up. 20 minutes later, he came down with suitcases and a box. I'm at the courtyard downtown, if you need. I won't. Anything we discuss goes through lawyers. He set down the box, looked like he wanted to say something profound. Instead, he just nodded. I never wanted it to end like this. No, you wanted it to end with me apologizing for noticing. This version is just more honest. He picked up his things and left. I locked the door, engaged the deadbolt. Paige appeared with wine. You okay? Getting there. That was impressively controlled. Was it? I took the wine. I don't feel cold. I feel clear, like I've been looking through fog for months and it finally lifted. You're handling this better than I would. I'm handling it the only way I know how, with documentation and boundaries. I touched my mother's necklace. She used to say silence was safer, that making waves made things worse. I believed that for years. Not anymore? Not anymore. Silence just lets other people write your story. I'd rather have truth and deal with the fallout than have peace built on lies. We drank wine and ordered pizza. I felt something unexpected. Hope. Not for the marriage. That was dead. But for whatever came next. For a life where I didn't have to pretend things were fine when they weren't. For relationships built on honesty instead of convenience. For freedom that comes from finally telling the truth. Monday morning, Victoria's office. Formal legal proceedings began. She'd prepared comprehensive filings. Petition for divorce, citing emotional affair and financial misconduct, motion for asset protection, request for full financial disclosure, demand for return of misappropriated funds. This is aggressive, Victoria said, sliding documents across her desk. But given the evidence, we're positioned strongly, the financial misconduct especially. Washington allows courts to disproportionately award assets when one spouse wastes marital funds. What does that mean practically? It means the $18,000 he funneled to Scarlett's company could come entirely from his half. House, retirement, savings. We argue he already took his extra share and should get less in final division. He'll fight. Everyone fights, but most settle when they realize how bad trial would look. She opened a file. Here's the timeline. I file these. He gets served. He has 20 days to respond. During that time, we have temporary protective order on joint accounts. He can't withdraw without court approval. What about the house? You stay. Both names on deed means neither can force the other out without court order. If he wants you gone, he files separately and proves why. Given facts? Unlikely. What do I do? Live your life. Document anything threatening or harassing. Don't engage directly. Let everything flow through me. She handed me a card. This is a therapist I recommend. You've experienced trauma, emotional abuse, gaslighting, financial deception. That leaves marks. Professional help isn't weakness. I took the card. I'll consider it. Don't think too long. Court proceedings are stressful. You'll want support. Papers were served Tuesday afternoon. Mason's lawyer called Victoria within an hour, angry about privacy violations and character assassination. Victoria's response: prove it wrong. They couldn't. Wednesday, Elijah's divorce papers hit. Scarlett's lawyer made noise about overreaction, nothing physical, vindictiveness. Elijah's response: I submitted 140 pages of evidence. Let her explain that to a judge. Thursday, I returned to work. My boss Randall called me in. I heard about the separation, I'm sorry. Thank you. HR wants me to check. Anything work-related we need to know? Concerns about system access? Data security? I understood what he was really asking. Did I use company resources for personal forensics? Everything was on personal time with personal equipment. No company assets involved. Good. He relaxed. I also want you to know, professionally, what you did was textbook forensics. Clean recovery, proper documentation, verified chain of custody. If you ever want to pivot into legal tech support, you'd be valuable. I appreciate that. Personally, my sister went through similar. Her husband told her she was crazy for noticing his affair. She stayed quiet for 2 years before finding proof. By then, he'd hidden most of their money. He met my eyes. You did the hard thing at the right time. That takes courage. Friday afternoon, Mason's formal response arrived. Victoria called with the summary. He claims emotional distress, invasion of privacy, argues evidence was obtained illegally. He wants it suppressed. Can he do that? He can try, but arguments are weak. You had legitimate access. Techniques were professional and documented. And emotional distress? Hard to claim when you caused the situation. She paused. He's also arguing for reconciliation counseling before proceeding. No. Thought you'd say that. I'll file response declining counseling and noting he only requested it after being caught, not when the marriage was actually salvageable. Timeline? Assuming he doesn't settle, which he probably will once he realizes trial means all evidence becomes public record, 6 to 9 months. Temporary orders hearing in 3 weeks for immediate financial and property arrangements. Mediation in about 2 months. Trial date set for 8 months, but most settle before trial. And if he settles? We negotiate terms. Split assets, likely with adjustment for financial misconduct. Clean break. You both move on. That sounds good. It sounds boring, which in divorce law means healthy. She shuffled papers. One more thing. I'm recommending a restraining order. Has he threatened me? No, but I've seen enough cases to know when protection might be needed. He's losing control of the narrative. His family and friends see evidence. His perfect new relationship is imploding. People in that position sometimes escalate. I don't think Mason would. Neither do most people until it happens. It's protective. He stays away from house and workplace unless through legal channels. Small price for peace of mind. I agreed. The order was filed Monday. By week 2, patterns emerged. Scarlett's marriage collapsed faster. Elijah wanted out completely. No explanations, no counseling, no slow dissolution. His lawyer filed for expedited proceedings, arguing continued cohabitation was harmful. Evidence made it easy. No judge forces someone to live with a spouse who'd been planning to leave all along. Mason tried calling 3 times. I didn't answer. He texted asking to talk. I forwarded them to Victoria, who sent cease and desist. Paige reported office gossip had split into 2 camps. Those who thought I'd overreacted and destroyed a marriage over friendship, and those who thought I'd been smart to document everything. The second group is winning, she said over coffee. Turns out when you have actual evidence, people believe you. Imagine that. 3 weeks after filing, we had temporary orders hearing. The courtroom was smaller than expected. Wood paneling, harsh fluorescent lights, a judge who looked bored before we started. Mason sat at the other table with his lawyer, a sharp-suited man named Brennan, who specialized in making bad cases look better. Victoria presented evidence calmly: timeline, messages, financial records. She'd edited it into a 10-page exhibit laying out the affair chronologically. Mason's lawyer argued emotional affairs weren't grounds for divorce in Washington, a no-fault state. Victoria's response: "You're correct, Washington is no fault, meaning either party can file for any reason. But this court can consider conduct when dividing assets, particularly when one party wasted marital funds on an extramarital relationship." The judge, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses and nameplate reading, Honora Patricia Mendez,